This year we have created amazing high-end home decor dupes, thrift flips, trash to treasures, furniture flips, and incredible home decor DIYs. Here are 12 of the top best projects of 2023. So let's get started with number 1. I swapped out my chandelier in my bedroom. There was a fan in there. It was dark and dated, but we are going to take that fan and we are going to transform it into pieces that will be unrecognizable. So the first thing we need to do is take apart this fan. I got my screwdriver out and I went to work. I disassembled all the individual pieces from the fan. Once everything was disassembled, I laid it all out and I put on my creative thinking cap and started playing a little bit of mix and match, and I put some pieces together and mixed a couple different ones until I came up with a plan. Our first trash to treasure transformation is going to begin with these pieces here. We are going to be creating a stunning container. Now, like I said, these are the pieces that we're going to use from the fan, but I needed a sturdy base. Last week in my Look for Less dupes, my ginger jars needed a base to go on the bottom. So I found these wood rounds at Hobby Lobby. So I knew that they were there. I headed back over to Hobby Lobby and I found some similar wood rounds. These are larger. I love the detail on them and they come in at a great price of only $3.49. Now I have all of the mismatched pieces that I need to create my container. So what I did was I put that wood round down first. Then I took the first intricately detailed piece from the fan. I added E6000 along the bottom rim of this piece. And then I placed it firmly in the center of my wood round. Next, I took a circular piece from the fan. Again, I added some E6000 to it around the circumference, and then I put it over the top of the decorative piece. Now, I did get some hot glue and run it along the rim of this piece. The reason being is because I didn't want it to slide around while the E6000 was drying. The hot glue will hold it temporarily, and the E6000 will solidify these pieces together long term. And finally, I added some E6000 to this circular piece, followed by some more hot glue. Then I took my frosted glass bowl from the light fixture and placed it directly into the glue. After all my pieces were in place, I let the E6000 dry for 24 hours. Because this container is a mixture of wood, metal, and several textures, we need to bring everything together and make it cohesive. We're going to do that with some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I took my container outside and I sprayed it in the spray paint. I made sure that the entire container was covered in this white spray paint. I got underneath the bowl. I made sure that all the decorative pieces were painted, and then I let this first coat dry for 1 hour. It definitely needed a second coat, so I came back and I did the exact same thing. I sprayed the entire container in the second coat of paint. Once I achieved the look that I was going for, I let it dry for 3 hours. One thing that I knew would really bother me long term was that there was a gap in between the metal decorative piece and the wood base. So that just would have bothered me. We got to take care of that right now. We're going to do it with some all-purpose caulk. What I did was I ran a bead of this caulk right in that gap and I wiped it so it was stuck right in there, and then afterwards I got a damp cloth and I wiped off the excess caulk. Now we have a beautiful cohesive piece. All right, you guys, let's take a moment and just admire how beautiful this container is. Can you believe it started out as a light fixture that was dark and dated? And all we did was reimagine it into something that, in my opinion, is much better. It definitely looks like a high-end piece of beautiful home decor. So now that we have our container, let's add some flowers to the center. I have a whole bunch of cream flowers, cream and white flowers. I wanted to keep it neutral. And so these are the flowers that we're going to be using. Now we're going to create a tape grid. Of course, you guys know I love creating tape grids. So I got some Scotch tape and I made a few lines horizontally and vertically across the top of this container. Now I can take my flowers, and what I did in order to get them the height that I want was I bent the stem and I placed them inside of this container. I'm using some peonies, some hydrangea, a few magnolia flowers, a large variety of different types of cream flowers. Once all of my flowers were in the correct spot, I got some gold leaves and I added those in the arrangement for a pop of color and an elegant accent. All right, you guys, look at how beautiful this flower arrangement is. How stunning is this? Look at how big it is. It's huge. And we started off with a light fixture that was going to be thrown away or donated, but we decided to give it new life. So if you have some random pieces laying around your house that you just don't know what to do about, see if you can transform it into something that is more your style. To me, this is a classic piece. It's a timeless piece, and it came a long way from being a dark, dated fan in my bedroom. Another item that I found at my thrift store that I absolutely loved was this metal container. I loved the size of it, and the cutouts were so cool. And of course, you gotta love the price of $4.99. So I scooped it up and brought it home. What I do not love about this piece is the color. It's too dark, so we're gonna brighten it up, and hey, we didn't use any white or gold on our last project, so we're gonna make up for it on this one. So I took this container outside and I sprayed it in some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure that the entire outside of this container was painted in the spray paint, and the inside, once everything was 100% coated in the spray paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. This piece already looks 100 times better, but we're going to take it a little bit further and we're going to add some additional details to our container. There's a raised line that goes around the entire circumference of this container, and so we are going to paint it in some metallic champagne gold paint. I got a paintbrush and a piece of copy paper just to make sure I didn't go over the line, and I painted this line that went around the entire circumference of this container. Once it was done, I let it dry for a couple hours. One more detail that we are going to add is feet. So when I was at Michael's, they had these little wooden rounds. They are doll heads, which is a little odd, but they work beautifully when you need feet because it has a flat top and the rest is round. Another great thing is that all regular priced items were 30% off, so we got them for a great price. So I took these wooden rounds outside and I sprayed them in some gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. Once they were 100% coated in this spray paint, I let them dry for an hour. Now these are really gold right now, and I want them to coordinate with the champagne gold that we added on the line. So what I did was I got a paintbrush and I added just one coat of this metallic champagne gold to the feet. That way it toned down the gold just a little bit, and it also helps to color coordinate the feet and the line together. Once they were painted, I let them dry for an hour. Now it's time to attach the feet to my container. So I flipped it upside down and I got some E6000. I added the E6000 to the wood feet, and I placed all of these wood feet on the bottom of the container and I spaced them out evenly. Once they were in place, I let them dry overnight. Look at how pretty this container is now, you guys. It is gorgeous. I knew it had potential when I saw it at the thrift store. To beautify it even further, we're gonna add some flowers into our container. But first up, we've gotta create our tape grid. So I added a few lines of tape horizontally and vertically across the top of the container. And then I gathered up my flowers. This time we're going to be using some wisteria and some peonies. I added these wisteria bunches to my container first, I love the way the wisteria just drapes. Oh, it's just so pretty. And I think it's perfect for this time of year. It's just whimsical and really bright and cheerful. And then I took my peony stems and I added those to the container as well. I wanted a large flower arrangement, and that is exactly what we ended up with. I'm going to place it right here on my mantle. It fits perfectly because the container is long and thin. It fits right on top of my mantle, and I love the flowers. They are, again, just bright, cheerful, but they look so classy. With the additional gold feet and gold line around this container, it makes it look high-end. The cutouts give this container so much personality. It looks very custom. And can you believe that we purchased it for $4.99? What a bargain. With a little creativity, we were able to transform this into a classy, elegant, expensive looking piece of decor. I found this at a thrift store. It is a lovely brown urn. It's chipped in some places, it's dirty, it's dusty, and the color is way too dark. But I love the size and the shape, and the detailing on it is beautiful. Our inspiration piece is from Distinctive Decor. What I liked about this piece was the marbling that was on it. We're going to be using this as an inspiration piece. We are, however, going to be putting a unique spin on ours since the shapes aren't identical. Another thing that is not identical is the price. This piece from Distinctive Decor is $209. And that's just too much for me to pay, so we're going to do it ourselves. The first thing we need to do is wash it really good, and then now I took it outside. We're gonna spray paint it in some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. We want it to be neutral, so we're painting it white. Once it was completely painted, I let it dry for 1 hour. Hydro dipping is one of my favorite techniques because you always get a one-of-a-kind, unique piece. That's what we're going to be doing in order to get the marbling on our urn. So what I did was I got a big plastic storage container and I lined it with a contractor's garbage bag. Then I filled it up almost to the top with water. Then I selected 3 spray paints. I chose a white, a gold, and a silver. What I do with my paint is I alternate spraying it in the water. I started with the white, then moved on to the gold and the silver, and I just alternated these paint colors, creating a bullseye in the water. You can see as we do this technique that it begins to make a marble design. Once I had enough paint in my water, I took my urn and I dipped it into the water. Now this paint will just cling right to your piece. You can swirl it around just a little bit. Once the paint was on my urn, I pulled it out of the water. Then I repeated this process again. I did the paint, I just alternated the colors. Once I was satisfied with the amount of paint in the water, I dipped the second side of the urn into the paint and the water. Again, this paint just clings to the piece. I pulled it out. I love the way that it looks. It looks just like marble. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful technique. There's no way I could have gotten this design style by painting it myself. This hydro dipping technique makes this urn look just like it's marble. It's high-end and classy. Now at this point, you're gonna let this dry for several hours. And what I'm gonna do with mine, now that it's dry, is I'm going to add some flowers to it. I just got a few bunches of peonies, I bent the stems, and I just placed them inside of my urn to finish off the look. Now let's do a side-by-side comparison, our inspiration piece and our thrifted piece. I think they look so similar. Honestly, I like mine better because number one, I love the shape of this urn. It's so unique and different, but the marbling on it just exceeded my expectations. Now let's talk about what we've all been waiting for, and that is to find out the cost of my urn. My piece from the thrift store was only $5.99. What a steal. It was a no-brainer. Now, I'm going to estimate that I spent about $3 on the paint. So in total, I spent $9 to dupe this urn. That's a savings of $200. I like that. I'll save that all day long. And look at how beautiful this piece ended up. This was a fantastic dupe. I love it. I'm gonna be able to use this in so many projects, in so many decor styles, in so many designs. I'm really excited that we duped this. This inspiration piece is a decorative box from Kathy Quo. I love the gold accents along the top and the bottom, the gold feet, and the decorative handle. What I do not like is the price of $320. That's too expensive, and I know that we can make one for less. So the first thing that we need is a box. While I was out shopping at Michael's, I came across the clearance section. I found these large wooden gift card boxes. They were a great size and the price was fantastic. They were only $10 a piece. There were a few very obvious changes that needed to be made to this box. The first being the color. It was far too dark. This mahogany color is not going to work out, so we are going to paint it white. Before we paint our box, we need to remove the latch. This latch is okay, but I know that we can find something better. So I simply got my screwdriver and I took this latch off the box. Now there are holes left over. The easy solution is just to get some wood putty and putty up those holes. That's exactly what I did. Once the wood filler was in the holes, I let it dry for about 30 minutes and then I came back and I sanded it down so it was nice and smooth. I took my box outside and I got some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. Because the original color was a dark mahogany, I needed to spray a fair amount of white paint on the box to make sure that the original color would not bleed through. Once the box was 100% coated in the white spray paint, I let it dry for 2 hours. Our inspiration piece had some gold accents on the top and the bottom. We are going to recreate that with some gold leaf rub and buff. I purchased mine at Hobby Lobby. I've also purchased the rub and buff on Amazon in the past. So what I'm gonna do in order to get really straight lines is grab some blue painter's tape. The blue painter's tape will provide me a straight outline. And as a bonus, when I go to remove the painter's tape, it won't peel off the white spray paint. I made sure that the blue painter's tape was pressed firmly to the box so that I would get crisp, clean lines. I took the gold rub and buff and a rag and I added a dab of the gold rub and buff to the rag. I simply continued to add more rub and buff to the rag and then dabbed it onto the box in between the painter's tape. I went along the entire top of the box, and once it was completely coated, I moved on to the bottom. I added more rub and buff in between the exposed portion. Once I was done with the first pass, I inspected the gold and I could see that there were some areas that were a little bit lighter than others. So all I needed to do was get a little bit more of that gold rub and buff and go over it once again. This will give me a really saturated gold color, which will stand out. This rub and buff acts more like wax than paint, so you don't have to wait very long for it to dry. So I waited maybe 15-20 minutes and then I could remove the blue painter's tape. Now I made sure that I had something underneath my box as I was removing it, because when you remove the blue painter's tape, the rub and buff will flake off, so you want to make sure it doesn't go everywhere. But look at how crisp and sharp these lines are. These lines look professional. They are pristine and well defined. Next, we're going to add the knob to the box. Our inspiration box had a hanging knob. You can buy these at Hobby Lobby very affordably. I saw some there. I actually picked up 2, which we are going to be using in another project. However, for this box, I found something that I liked even better at Ross. These are quartzite and they have a beautiful gold accent around it. I love the natural, almost marble look of these. So I'm going to be veering off just a little bit and we're going to be using these knobs instead. So I got my drill and I drilled a hole through the center of the lid. Then I took my quartz knob and I put it through the hole. Then I threaded the washer and the nut onto the screw to hold it in place. I personally love this knob so much better. It looks classy, clean, very elegant, and adds a bit of a modern touch as well. The final addition that we need to make to our box is to add some feet. Now, a couple weeks ago, I did a thrift flip and I turned a container that I purchased at the thrift store into a beautiful planter for my flowers. And I added some feet to that container. What they were some doll heads that I purchased at Michael's. So I went back to Michael's. This time I'm purchasing some smaller round doll heads. These are perfect because they're round, but they have a flat part at the top. So I took these wood rounds outside and I sprayed them in some gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure that they were completely covered in the gold spray paint. Once they were 100% coated, I let them dry for 1 hour. I flipped my box upside down and then I got some E6000. I added the E6000 to the wood rounds and then I placed them on each of the 4 corners of my box. Once everything was in place, I let this dry overnight. We are done with our box. Look at how pretty this is. I love it. The size is huge. It's elegant. I love the gold accents on it. The knob is so classy and adds a bit of a modern touch. I love how it's elevated with the feet. And one thing that I did not change about my box was I left this little slit at the top for cards. I figured I could use this for a party. People could put cards in here or some advice. So I did actually contemplate closing this up, but I'm glad that I didn't, because not only is this box decorative, I can actually use it as a functional piece during a party. As a reminder, our inspiration box was from Kathy Quo when it was $320. To calculate my cost, I am going to be prorating things. So for instance, I only used 1 knob and I only used 4 of the wood rounds. So I'm going to take that into consideration. To create my box, it cost me $23.50. What a great deal. We saved $206.50 over our inspiration piece. That's a bargain, and I love the way that this looks. I created a fireplace mantle for my bedroom. It was such a fun project, and I love the way that this looks in the space. The only problem was I didn't have some artwork that fit the scale that I could put above my fireplace. So we are going to make some today, and we're going to do it with all of the leftover pieces that I used to make my fireplace. To go along with the wood, I also have a mirror that I saved from the bathroom renovation that we did last spring. It was on the wall, but I swapped it out for a thrifted mirror, and I saved it for a project just like this. So the first thing we need to do is cut some wood veneer to the perfect size to go behind my mirror to give it extra support. Now I had this extra wood veneer that was left over from the fireplace, and all I needed to do was cut it to the perfect size. I also had some leftover molding pieces, and this is going to be the frame around my mirror. I wanted something streamlined and simple to go with the other mirrors that are in my room. I have these tall rectangular mirrors that go above each of my nightstands, and the frame around them is very simple, very streamlined, very clean. So I wanted to mimic those mirrors so we had a cohesive look in this space. So I trimmed them with my miter saw. I just cut some 45-degree angles on each of the ends. Once they were cut, I decided that I needed to spray paint them gold because, again, I wanted them to be cohesive with those other mirrors in the room. I got some gold Rust-Oleum spray paint and I sprayed these trim pieces in the paint. I made sure that everything was covered thoroughly in the spray paint, and then I let them dry for 1 hour. Now I have all of my wood pieces trimmed and my mirror is prepped and ready, so let's put everything together. I'm going to be using some liquid nails. I put a whole bunch of liquid nails on the top of this veneer. You do not want this mirror to slide off, and so liquid nails is a perfect option to make sure that everything sticks together. Once I had all the liquid nails on the top of the veneer, I slowly dropped down my mirror over the top. Now this mirror is really heavy, so the weight of the mirror alone is enough that will make the wood and the mirror stick together. I used more of the liquid nails to put around the edge, and then I set my trim right over the top of the liquid nails. Now I cut all my pieces so they fit together like a puzzle. Once everything was in place, I let it dry for 24 hours. Once the 24 hours was up, I simply popped this mirror on the top of my mantle. Now this is a leaner, so I just leaned it up against the wall. And you guys, I love the way that this mirror looks. It is so pretty. It is the right scale and size for this space. The colors coordinate with the other mirror. The golds go together. The sizes also mimic each other. They're these long rectangular sizes. And I just love mirrors. I love the way that they reflect light back into the room, and they're timeless. This is not going to go out of style. The best part, I didn't spend any additional money to create this mirror. All I did was use scraps from leftover projects, and now I have a show-stopping piece that I can put above my fireplace mantle. My inspiration piece is from Etsy. I absolutely loved this pillow covering. It is so beautiful, so high-end. I loved the blue leaves on it. What I didn't love was the price of $48.99. I know that we can make one that's similar for less. So we already have our pillow covering. Now we need to make some leaves. I was at Hobby Lobby and all of the ribbon was 40% off. And I came across this velvet ribbon. I love the gorgeous shade of blue. We are going to be using this ribbon to create our leaves. So what I needed was a pattern. So I created a leaf pattern on Canva and I simply printed it off. If you want to use this pattern, you can. I will leave a link to the free printable in my description box. So all I did was I cut out the leaves and the stem, and then I flipped my ribbon over and I put my pattern over the top. Then I got a pencil and I traced out the leaves and the stem. Then I took my fabric scissors and I cut everything out. I will say cutting out a lot of these leaves was really time consuming. So put on some fun music or put my videos on in the background so you can listen to them and watch them while you cut out these leaves. Once everything was cut out, I arranged them over the top of my pillow covering. I made sure that everything was in the right place and that I liked the design. I'm going to adhere the ribbon leaves to the pillow covering with some fabric glue. I got this at Hobby Lobby, and all I did was I added the fabric glue to the back of the leaves and the stems, and I just pressed it firmly to the pillow covering. You're going to want to make sure that the leaves are really well adhered, so add a bunch of this glue because you want everything to stick well. Once everything was glued down, I let it dry overnight. I filled my pillow covering with a down pillow insert that I already had. It just slipped it right inside and we are done, you guys. Look at how beautiful this pillow covering is. It looks so expensive, so high-end. I love the velvet leaves and stems. They look so luxurious. I think our pillow covering looks so similar to our inspiration piece pillow covering, but they are not similar in price. If you remember, our inspiration pillow covering was $48.99. So I'm going to calculate all the costs that went into creating my pillow covering, and it came to a grand total of $10.24. I think that that is such a steal for how gorgeous this is. And what I'm going to do with this pillow is I'm going to put it smack dab in the center of the pillows on my bed. It definitely elevates the luxurious look of my bedding. This was easy and affordable to do. I think we met and exceeded the challenge of taking this pillow covering and turning it into something beautiful. This piece is from Horchow, and you guys, it's over $4,000. Way too much for me to pay. This is what it is. It's a gorgeous piece of wall art. I love the colors, the textures, the size, everything about it is absolutely stunning, except for, of course, the price. As you can see, it is $4,125. That's way out of my budget, so let's make it for less. The first IKEA item that we are going to use in our dupes is a placemat. They have a huge variety of placemats here. Placemats are so versatile. They can be for some art. So let's see what we can do with this pretty one right here. But we are not gonna leave this placemat plain. We are going to jazz it up. And we're gonna do that with some white craft paint. So I got my craft paint and a paintbrush, and I began to paint along the outside of this placemat. I went around the rim of the placemat and then I just worked my way inside. I'm going to paint various areas on this placemat to make my artwork look unique and special. It's not identical to our inspiration piece, but it's pretty close. And I like the unique touches that we added to make ours one of a kind. So once I had all the paint on my placemat, I let it dry for 1 hour. In the meantime, while this paint was drying, it's time to focus on the frame. Now the frame in our inspiration piece is a lucite frame. My frame is from the thrift store and it was only $5.99. What we're gonna do with my frame is we are going to paint it white. So I had to remove the glass and the backing from the frame, and then I took my frame outside and I sprayed it in some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure it was completely saturated in the spray paint. I painted the top, the sides, and once it was completely done, I let it dry for 2 hours. The backing on our inspiration piece was neutral and it looked like it was textured, and so I wanted to do something very similar, and I remembered that I had some leftover fabric from when we redid the dining room. I reupholstered these chairs and I had some of this leftover fabric, and so that's what we're going to use. I cut out a square of this fabric and I covered the backing from my frame. I got some hot glue and I hot glued the fabric to the back of the frame to make it stay in place. Then I took my placemat and I put it in the center of our square. I got a ruler out to make sure that it was centered, and then I got some hot glue and I hot glued the placemat to the backing. Now that everything's been transformed, it's time to put it back together. So I got my frame and I put my glass in first, then I put in our artwork. Now, because we have a 3D placemat in the front, it's not going to fit like it did originally. It's gonna poke out just a little bit in the back. So I was able to clamp down a couple of the staples, but in order to secure it really well together, I got some clear packing tape and I put it around the edge where the backing and the frame meet. That way the artwork does not fall out of the frame. Now we are finished with our artwork. I love the way that this turned out. It would be a beautiful piece in so many different decor styles. And I think it is very similar to our inspiration piece. Well, similar in the fact that they look the same, but they certainly do not cost the same. So let's go over the cost of how much I spent to create my wall art. The placemat from IKEA was $7. The frame from the thrift store was $5.99. The square of fabric was $3. We'll say that we spent like a quarter on the craft paint. We didn't use that much. So in total, it's going to cost me $16.25 to create my wall art. I love that cost. That is a great cost for this beautiful wall art. And that means that we saved $4,108.75 over the Horchow piece. I found this large white tray at my thrift store. I loved the size. The cutout detail along the edges is so pretty, and the oval shape is unique. And of course, you cannot beat the price of $3.99. In fact, when I went to wash this, I flipped it over and I found out that originally it's from IKEA, so I know that we have saved ourselves a lot of money by purchasing this tray at the thrift store. There are a few things that we need to fix on our tray. The first is that there were some areas where the paint had chipped, and then also there are some rust areas that need to be sanded down and covered up. So I got a fine grit sandpaper and I sanded over the rust areas and also the chip paint so that everything was smooth. And then I washed it off to get all the dust and debris off so it'd be nice and clean for painting. I am going to repaint our white tray white. So I took it outside and I got some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I painted all over the tray. I made sure that the areas that were chipped or rusted got a thorough coat of paint. Once everything was covered in the white spray paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. Now it's time to spruce up our tray. We are going to do it with some cardstock. I had this book of cardstock and inside was a really pretty blue and white rose cardstock. I loved this design. I'm going to cut out these flowers. I started off with just a pair of scissors, but there was a lot of indents and details that needed to be cut away, so I ended up switching over to an X-Acto knife and a self-healing mat. You can use either one, it'll work both ways. I'm cutting my flowers out individually because one piece of cardstock would not fit across the entire bottom, the oval part, and I didn't want to see a seam where I tried to align the pieces together. So what I'm going to do is just cut away these individual flowers and place them sporadically throughout the bottom of the tray. So once all of my roses were cut out, I did a quick dry run. I added them to the bottom of the tray and moved them around to put them in the correct spot. Then I got some Mod Podge and a sponge brush, and I painted the Mod Podge onto the bottom of the tray. I placed my cardstock blue and white roses over the Mod Podge. I continued adding the Mod Podge and positioning the roses on the tray until everything was in place. Then I let this first layer dry for about an hour. Then I added a top layer of Mod Podge over the roses and the tray. I added a decent amount. I want everything to be coated really well in the Mod Podge. This top layer of Mod Podge will protect the tray and the cardstock. It also adds a nice sheen to the top of the tray. Once the Mod Podge had been covered over the entire surface of the tray, I let it dry for 3 hours. And here is our gorgeous tray all dressed up. I love these roses. They are so pretty. I love the blue and white, and you could use any paper that fits your style or season. The possibilities are endless on this project. There are so many ways that you can display this tray as well. You could put it on a frame stand. You could use it as a tray and put decorative objects on it as well. Because we put Mod Podge over the paper, it's sealed so you could use it for food. I've never seen anything quite like this tray, and that is what makes thrifting so special. You can take a regular piece and customize it to your liking and to your style. Now I've had this buffet for over 10 years. I bought it off Facebook Marketplace. It was under $200, so it was a deal back then. It has been loved. It has definitely been used. It's got some scratches on it now. It's got some dings. It's definitely been loved, and it is a worn out piece. I also don't love this dark mahogany color. It's really heavy on this side of the room. Your eye's just kind of drawn over here because of how dark this piece is. And so I want to brighten it up so it goes along better with my overall design sense and makes everything cohesive in this room. So what we're going to do with this piece is take it outside, and I'm going to begin by sanding it down. So I got my sander and I began to sand the top, and then I realized that this was a very big job, and so I needed to recruit some help. So I asked my sweet twins to come and help me, which they did. They're so good, and they helped me to sand down the rest of the buffet and the drawers. Now there were these twisted Tuscan style half columns that were on either side of the buffet, And while I have enjoyed this detail in the past, I'm trying to update my piece and make it look a little more modern and streamlined. So these beauties have to go. So I got a chisel and I chiseled them off. They're just glued on, so they popped off fairly easily. And as a replacement, I got some 1x4s and I cut those down to size with my miter saw. Then I got some decorative trim. This is a thinner trim, and I cut those down to size as well. Then I got my nail gun and I nailed the 1x4s into place. And then for the thinner trim, what I'm gonna do is use some liquid nails. Because I cut those pieces to fit in there really tight, they stay in place anyways, so adding the liquid nails will adhere it tightly to the buffet, but I also did not want to put any nail holes in this trim because then I would have had to fill it with wood putty, and I didn't want to do that. So the liquid nails is perfect for adhering these pieces together. And then finally, I took some caulk and I caulked along the edges of the pieces of trim. Now it's time to wash the whole thing down. We want it clean before we paint it. So I got some crud cutter and I wiped down the buffet itself and also all of the drawers. Now it's time to paint it. So I made a makeshift paint shop out in my garage with some tarps, and then I got some polar bear cabinet paint and my paint sprayer. I love using a paint sprayer. I think it gives your piece a professional look. So I did 4 coats of paint on the buffet and 4 coats of paint on the drawer fronts. And painting it white makes it look already a million times better than that dark stain. To update it even further, I'm going to swap out the knobs. Before they were these big, round, chunky knobs. I thought they were too big for the particular drawers. And I also wanted to update them into a more modern style. So what I did was I headed over to Hobby Lobby, and luckily for me, all of the knobs and the pulls were 50% off. I found this rectangular marble knob that has some gold detail to it. So pretty. They were originally $7 a piece, but luckily for me, they were half off, so $3.50 was the cost, which was great because I needed 11 of them. So we're keeping costs down by buying things on sale. And then I just added these knobs straight onto the front of the doors. The hardware makes this piece feel so luxurious. The white marble is a high-end material. It goes along with our color scheme in this room, as well as the gold accents match perfectly with all the other gold in this space. So now we're finished. Are you ready for the big reveal? Well, here it is. I love the way that this looks now. It is so light and bright. It's much more modern because we added streamlined details like the new trim and the knobs. The white paint color brightens up the space now. It doesn't feel dark and heavy like it did before. It's a light, bright piece that makes this room feel so much larger. This piece definitely needed a makeover. It's done its duty for 10 years, but now with a more modern transformation, I'll be able to use it for the next 10 years. We also transformed this very affordably. All we did was spend money on the paint and on the new hardware. So by repurposing an old piece, we are able to save money, update our space, and make it look so much more luxurious. I had a request from one of my fabulous subscribers to make a wall art piece similar to the one that I found on the Pottery Barn website. It is this palm leaf shadow box wall art. This is such a cool piece of art. It would go with a lot of different styles and designs. I love the size, however, it is $399, which is quite expensive, and I know that we can recreate it for less. So the first thing that we need is a frame. I headed to my local thrift store. They always have such an amazing variety of frames there. I found one that had a thin frame and it was square. It was the perfect size and shape, And the best part is that it was only $5.99. What we want to use is the frame and not the art that's inside. So we're going to remove the art and the mat from the frame, and then I carefully lifted out the glass so that we were left with just the frame only. I don't know how long it was at the thrift store, so I washed it with a damp cloth to make sure it was nice and clean, so when we spray paint it, the paint will adhere to the frame. I'm going to be using some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint to paint our frame white. I took it outside and I sprayed it in the spray paint. I made sure that the entire frame was covered in the spray paint. I did the front, the sides, and painted the inside of the frame as well to make sure it was all one cohesive color. Once it was completely coated in the paint, I let it dry for 2 hours. While the paint is drying, this is a perfect time for us to get started on our palm leaf. We are going to make ours out of some poster board. I picked up mine at Target. They were only 99 cents, which is cheaper than in the Dollar Tree, so that's a great place to get your poster board. What I'm gonna do with my poster board is cut strips out of it. So I got my self-healing mat and I put my poster board over the top. Then I got a pencil and a ruler and I marked out 1.5 inch wide segments. Then I got my rotary cutter and I cut the poster board into strips. One poster board was large enough to give me all the pieces that I needed to create this palm art. Once I had all the poster board strips, I cut them into various lengths. I did a 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 inch long strips. Once all of these segments were cut, I folded them in half. Then I cut the top with scissors into points. I repeated this process with all of my poster board pieces. Now it's time to create our fan. So I took the smallest 7-inch segment first. I put some hot glue in the center, pressed it together, and then I put some hot glue on the outside. Then I took my second folded segment of poster board and pressed it firmly to the first segment. I repeated the process of hot gluing the inside and the outside of the folded poster board pieces in ascending order until I had half of the fan hot glued and connected together. Then I got started on the second half of the fan. Again, I took the shortest 7-inch segment first. I put some hot glue on it, and then I just hot glued all of the other poster board pieces together. This time I divided it up into 3 different segments. That way when I put it all together, I could move everything around and make sure that it was all nice and evenly fanned out. We need to create a background that's similar to our inspiration piece background. I have this fabric, it's leftover fabric. It's actually from my dining chairs, and it is the perfect match to our inspiration piece. So what I'm gonna do with my fabric is put it over the self-healing mat and then take the back of the frame and place that over my fabric. Then I got a ruler and my rotary cutter and I simply just cut around the backing of the frame. This will give me a perfect square that will fit right on top of the backing. Once my square was cut out, I got some hot glue and I put it along the edge of the backing. I kept the hot glue to the edges, and that way we didn't have any lumps or bumps in the center of the fabric. I continued to add the hot glue to the edges and then pressed the fabric into the hot glue. Now it's time to adhere the fan to the fabric. So what I did was I just took some hot glue and I put it on the back of the first half of the fan, and then I pressed it firmly to the fabric. I added a bunch of hot glue in various places on the backing of the fan. You don't want this to move around, you want it to be stable. So adding a decent amount of hot glue will hold everything in place. Then I took the additional segments for the other side of the fan and added the hot glue to the back of those and placed them in the right spots to create the other half of my fan. I did cut some additional segments of poster board for filler just in case I needed it. So I did add a couple extra little fan pieces in there to make my palm leaf look nice and full. Now that the palm leaf is in place, we need to add a stem. So I just cut a rectangle and just rounded the top, got some hot glue, added it to the back and pressed it to the fan. Now in my inspiration piece, if you zoom in really close, you can see there's like some frayed pieces of either fabric or paper. So in order to recreate that, what I'm gonna do is get some cotton balls and I'm just gonna pull them apart, add a little bit of hot glue to the fan, and then put the cotton ball right over the top. I think that this mimics our inspiration piece fantastically. Plus, as a bonus, it is hiding all of the places where the fans are connected. You never want to see the mechanics of how everything is stuck together. So these cotton ball pieces are a great way to hide all of that. Now that our palm leaf art is done, all we need to do is put it right back into the frame. I flipped my frame over and put our art right back in the center. One thing that we are not going to be doing is putting the glass back over the front. We don't have the space for it because of the 3D palm leaf. Our inspiration piece was a shadow box. Ours is just going to be an open frame. We will have our 3D palm art stick out, which is just fine for me. I actually really like it this way. So that is one liberty that we are going to take over our inspiration piece. And that's it, we are done. Look at how fantastic this palm art looks compared to our inspiration piece. I think they look so similar. They're similar in size, the leaves are the same, the backing's the same. I just really love the way that this turned out. And the best part is finding out the price differentiation from our inspiration piece to what I made. So let's calculate my expenses. In total, it cost me $14 to create my palm leaf wall art. I think that that is a steal. Finding the frame from the thrift store was a great jumping off point to create our wall art. For $5.99, it kept everything in budget. Using the poster board was cost efficient, and all the other little pieces didn't add up to much. So if you think you can't get a high-end piece of wall art, you can head to your thrift store. That's a great place to start. I'm going to show you how I decorated my fireplace. We are going to start off with a garland. Now I like a big, fat, beefy garland, so that is exactly what we're going to do. The way we're going to do it is by intertwining two different garlands. I have a pine garland, and on top of that, I'm going to put a flocked garland. I purchased 2 of these flocked garlands from Walmart. They are extremely affordable. You don't need to spend a ton of money on a garland. Walmart has great options, Target has some good options, so in order to keep the budget down, check out those stores. So what we're going to do is intertwine these garlands. I simply placed the flocked garland over the pine garland, and then I twisted the branches together. By doing this, not only is the flocked garland intermixed with the pine garland, there's now a 2-tone color scheme that gives the garland depth. I also love how the Christmas garland elegantly cascades from the floor, gracefully ascends to the top of the fireplace mantle, extends along the top, and then descends back to the floor. The next step is to add some ribbon to our garland. But before we do that, I've got to introduce my color scheme for this holiday season. You guys know that in the past, I've done a sage color, I've done a winter white, I've done copper accents, I've kept it traditional with red and green. I don't think it should be any surprise that this year I'm going to stick to a blue and white color scheme. I used this color scheme in the fall, and I was really inspired to keep that color scheme going. To enhance this color scheme, I'm going to be using several ribbons throughout my decor. I was at Hobby Lobby and I found a huge variety of these beautiful dark navy blue and gold ribbons. They had striped ribbon, solid ribbon, and a Merry Christmas ribbon. They also had them in a variety of widths as well. And I was able to get them for 50% off, which is great for my budget. So what I'm going to do is take the striped ribbon first. This is a gold and rich navy blue ribbon, and I wrapped it around the garland. This ribbon is a subtle way to introduce my navy blue color scheme. I also needed white in my garland as well. We are going to introduce that color in the form of some leaves. I use these leaves in the fall. They are from Michael's. I purchased a whole bunch of them on sale. And what I'm gonna do is tuck these leaves into the garland in various areas around the entire length of the garland. The second way we're gonna use white is with these poinsettias right here. I have some white and cream poinsettias. I bunched them at the corners. I added some flowers in the center and then some more poinsettias down the sides. I also added some sage frosted leaves. This adds another dimension of color. Then I got some berries. These berries, again, were purchased from Hobby Lobby. They were 50% off. I love this blue tone. It's royal blue and it matches beautifully with my color scheme. So I just took several of these bunches of berries and added them throughout the garland. Once I was done with the blueberries, I got some gold berries and I intermixed those in there as well. You cannot have a Christmas fireplace display without some stockings. I have these 6 cream stockings with a beautiful pearl accent, one for each of us in our family, and I added those below the garland. We've got to have a little bit of sparkle, and we're going to do that in the form of some transparent snowflake ornaments. I purchased these at Hobby Lobby. I'm going to take my snowflake ornaments and tuck them in various places throughout the garland. And the final ornament that we are going to add are these beautiful glass teardrop ornaments. These are from Home Goods. I love the way that the glass is reflective and enhances the glow of the Christmas lights. They look like pretty little icicles hanging down, which enhances the winter feel. Our garland is now complete, so let's focus on decorating the top of the mantle. We are going to add some height, and we're going to do that in the form of some grapevine Christmas trees. I purchased these at Bell's. They were very affordable. They were only $14.99 a piece. I love the height of them and the design. What I did not love was the color, which is of course an easy fix. So what we're gonna do is take these trees outside and I sprayed them in some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure that the entire tree was coated in this white spray paint. Even though it was covered in the white spray paint, you could still see a little bit of the brown grapevine coming through, which I like. I think it gives the trees dimension. So I didn't spray the whole thing a completely saturated white, but I did paint most of it white. Once I was satisfied with the paint coverage, I let it dry for 1 hour. Because this garland is so busy, we want to keep these trees plain. We don't want to add too much embellishment to them because our eyes need to rest somewhere. So we are done with those trees. They are white, they are beautiful, and they add height and they add symmetry because I have one on each side. In the center, I have a beautiful print. This print is from my website. I have a whole new collection out right now. This is my winter collection, and we have over 35 new prints for you to choose from. I'm going to be decorating with several of these prints throughout my house, and they have upped the elegant factor so much in my decorating. This print in particular on my fireplace mantle is my inspiration for this entire display. I love this European winter scene. These village houses are so magical, so I'm gonna stick with that theme. I also have some new products on my website as well. I have some table linens, some napkins, placemats, beautiful pieces that you'll be able to decorate with for Thanksgiving, fall, and of course this upcoming holiday season. The links to my website and to the prints that I'm using today will be in my description box. And when you're there, don't forget to use coupon code Lisa10, which will give you 10% off everything on my website. Okay, so this is the final piece that we are going to place on our mantelscape. This print is gorgeous. It looks like an oil painting and it ties everything together. Every year I say, oh, this is my favorite color scheme, or this is my favorite design. But I really do love the design of this mantelscape. I love the color scheme that we're using this year. This is a gorgeous garland and mantle top decor. It has the color scheme gently embedded into the design. The art print makes the display look luxurious. The grapevine trees give the mantle height, and the garland adds a full, lush, and bountiful feel to my fireplace. Fireplace in a home just changes the atmosphere. It makes it feel so warm and cozy, and the mantles just make everything look so elegant and beautiful. I'm going to make a fireplace mantle. So I started off by hitting up Lowe's. I went there and I got all the lumber that I needed. I got my 2x4s and I got a whole bunch of trim because I wanted this to look sleek, elegant, and beautiful. Brought everything home and I just got chopping. I got my miter saw out and I started cutting everything down to size. I would say that the hardest part about making this was the actual design of it. You can see all of my hand-drawn pictures with all my measurements on it. So yeah, so you've got to do some math, but beyond that, it's really easy to do. After I had my frame built, I got some wood paneling and I put it around the fireplace frame. And now it's time for the pretty part. I got my trim and I cut all the pieces that I needed to put on my fireplace. Once all those pieces were cut, I busted out my nail gun and I attached everything together. Now that my fireplace is created, I need to caulk it and fill in all of those nail holes. Once it was done, I gave it one final wash. And then I took it out to my garage where I had created a makeshift paint shop with a whole bunch of tarps. Now I'm going to be painting my fireplace mantle with some polar bear paint. And I get the cabinet grade because I like how it gives us good coverage, but it is also great for being able to wipe it down later because it's used for cabinets. I sprayed my fireplace mantle and I did 4 coats. I wanted to make sure that everything was sufficiently coated in this paint. I want it to look professional, and by using a paint sprayer, I always get a professional look. Once I was finished with my 4th coat of paint, I let it dry overnight. Now it's time to bring my fireplace mantle into my bedroom. Now you guys, I built this thing, but I built it on the ground and I had my boys take it out to the garage, and now it weighs this thing weighs probably close to 200 pounds. So I had to enlist the help of my husband and my twins to bring it back into the room because it was too heavy for me to carry. Now it's time to add my electric insert to my fireplace. This was so easy. I unboxed it from the packaging that it came in. It was packaged beautifully, and all I needed to do was remove a few screws to take off the front glass plate, and then I pushed the fireplace into the fireplace mantle. It slid right in, so I'm pretty proud of my measurements because it went right in. It was nice and snug, and then all I needed to do was take some screws that were provided and screw this electric insert into my fireplace mantle. After I was done screwing it into place, I got these glass beads that came with the fireplace and I put them in the little grooves that were right in the front. And now all I need to do is take that glass front and put it back on these little hooks that were on the front of the fireplace insert. I cannot even tell you how much I love this fireplace in this room. It is so pretty and it gives off a beautiful warm glow to this space. This fireplace is now the centerpiece of my bedroom. I absolutely love it, and I'm so happy that I was able to do it for an affordable price.